78 days.
Let me go to Joe, because Joe, how did we bring this up with Joe today? How did we find this out? Can you go over to...
It was because of a story I was talking about from Australia, where the government of Australia has tweaked their rules a little bit. Mm-hmm. And now they've decided if you've left a bank account inactive for a couple of years, they can just come in and take it because you're not using it. So it's an inactive bank account. And I think they've changed the rule to 3 years. So if you have not made a transaction in your bank account in 3 years, which
those
of course
wacky Aussies.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, man.
Aren't you glad that you don't live
I'm
upside
sure
down?
glad we don't live there.
So we're talking about this, and I'm explaining that this is the Western governments of the world checking the couch. They are looking for all nickels and dimes that they can possibly get.
Yeah, in Australia, in this particular couch, found $360 million.
Okay, so they're looking for bank accounts that have just expired because there's no activity there. Okay, so we're thinking about how crazy that is, and how do the banks? What right does the government have to even know what bank accounts are being used or not? When did this happen? So Joe said, we're talking about how crazy it is to be Australian, and Joe, who is my attorney and I don't know. I don't know. He's
chief of staff.
He's like,
that's what he is.
I guess he's like my Robin, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Batman. Anyway, Joe, he makes a horrible Robin. You see him on a bike. But he was talking about his bank account in Philadelphia. You had the same thing happen to you just recently. Our government is doing this now.
Yeah, so Stu was talking about Australia, and while he's going through these facts, I'm thinking, well, wait a second. This just happened to Melinda and I, and I guess it was 6 months ago. She was like, Joe, we stopped getting the statements on this one account. And, first she wanted to know if I had liquidated the account, and I assured her that I had not. And she's like, what happened? I said, I don't know. And so she started going through these statements, and on one statement, which was full of language, one sentence in one paragraph of that statement said, if you have no activity on this account, we will close out this account based on Pennsylvania law, blah, 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 blah.
It's amazing.
Well, what I don't understand is dividends were paid into this account. We were paying taxes on this money the whole time. And yet, because there was no activity for, I think it was a 6-month period, the state of Pennsylvania took that money
6 months
without any notice to us.
So the state just took your money out of the account, out of your own bank account, because there was no activity.
And then never notified you, never called you, nothing.
Nothing from the state.
After 6 months. How many of us have accounts that, you might have a retirement account you've put money into?
Yeah, the whole point of savings is that you're not constantly touching the money.
Correct. You leave it alone. You put it in the bank. And if I'm not mistaken, the bank is, the response from the bank is, well, it's kind of a problem. These kind of accounts are kind of a problem for us. They're kind of, right?
So we went to our state senator and said, this can't be right. Like, it wasn't an inactive account. Our mailing address was accurate. The email address associated with the account was accurate. There were all these ways to get a hold of us. The phone number was right. We're like, how could this be inactive? We're paying taxes on it. Dividends are being paid into the account. They're like, well, under this new law, any account that you don't log into, where you don't log into this account in a 6-month period, that money is transferred to the state.
You don't need it.
Yeah, and they're so rich they don't even notice it's gone.
You're paying it far too much, obviously.
We couldn't. It was unbelievable. So the state confirmed that, yes, that money was transferred. And we said, well, how much was taken? This is what they said. We won't know for 3 to 6 months how much money that we took from that account because our records aren't updated for that period of time.
Oh, my gosh.
Jeez. How can they do this? I mean,
well, how do you not know how much they took from that account?
Well, it was closed out, so we could go back to our own records, which we did. But what
and
we
you could
couldn't
see the
believe
last
was that
balance.
The state didn't know. So they take this money.
That's crazy.
Our state senator is calling the, I guess, Department of Treasury at the Pennsylvania level. They could not tell us where that money was, how much was taken, and how we got it, how we would get it back.
This is crazy.
We need to find out how many states and which ones are doing this.
So Melinda started, there's a website that you can go to, and you can look up to see if your name is on this site. Well, our name was on there, and then she started looking.
What's the site? Do you know?
I don't know.
It's a state-run
unclaimed
website?
property site. And you could look up, and she looked around, and 7 of our neighbors also had money in the unclaimed property account.
Jeez.
All of whom were like, "We didn't know that. Are you kidding me? They just took the money." So I just talked to Melinda today, and as of 2 weeks ago, the state of Pennsylvania has now started sending this money back to the rightful owners of the money.
How is that not a story everywhere?
I don't know.
How's that not a story
incredible.
everywhere?
But you did get your money back, Joe? They gave it all back to you?
Yes. I talked to Melinda today, and she said as of 2 weeks ago, that money was put back into the account.
Wow.
And think about this, though.
Wow.
If you don't have a record, if you've thrown out your statements,
You wouldn't know.
you wouldn't even know how much was supposed to be back in there if you're not monitoring it on an everyday basis.
And how do they have the right to do it? I mean, who is the government to come in and close my bank account without a judge?
Like we were talking about this
Without
morning.
me defending it.
How do we even know there's no activity on it? What are you doing monitoring why is the government paying attention to
this
that?
is such a dangerous thing because, my grandparents lived through the Great Depression. And my grandparents, they had 2 rules. I don't keep all our money in the bank because I don't trust the damn bank. And the second rule is I don't go to the hospital because hospitals are where you go to die. Hospitals are where you go to die. I never understood that until recently. VA, you're going there to die, man. Especially with, my father was in the hospital and he had, what is that nasty, you get it from the hospitals.
MRSA?
MRSA. So you get MRSA, you're dead. I mean, you just might write it off. And so we're really starting to develop a place to where the hospitals are a place you go to die. It's not there yet, but we're not far from it. You could see that in a 5-year period if we don't turn this bus around.
Come to the hospital.
Yeah.
It's like you're just altering it.
My grandparents didn't trust the banks. They didn't trust the doctors. We're headed right back to that period where, if you don't, really, 6 months, the government, without notifying you, can just take your money out of the bank? You know what? I thank you very much. I'm going to keep it myself. How dangerous of a precedence is this? What is the name of your bank? Do you care to share? Are all banks doing this up there?
No, this was one of those stock holding services like CompuShare. Like it was held by them, but it applies to any kind of stock or investment that you have.
What are you?
Oh my gosh, that's even worse than a bank.
Oh, much worse. But this is it. So what happens to the interest payments for people that have lost that money for 2 years, or the dividends that were paid to that account? I'm sure that we'll still be responsible for the taxes on that money.
Oh my gosh.
There's a whole bunch of questions.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and what are you supposed to do with stock? If you leave it alone. A long hold sort of philosophy, you buy it, you hold on to it for a long time.
Here's what I want to do. Would you just get in touch with whoever would be the best in the stocks and bonds or whatever we have, anybody in finance at the Blaze? Talk to them, get them on this story, and find this story out. Because I think this is a huge story. I've never even heard of this. I've never even heard of it. And it's crazy. It's worse that it's not money. It's worse that it's stocks. 6 months.
It strikes me as like a minor league Cyprus sort of situation.
It is.
And that's the direction
It's a shark
we're going.
bump.
Yeah.
It's a shark bump. If they can do this, they can do anything.